Alrighty, welcome everyone to episode 2 of the Rise to Your Peak podcast. I am here with my guest today, Lauren Valentino, and we're going to be talking about some of her services and how we work together at Ryze HRT to help various clients with their dysfunction. A little bit about Lauren. Lauren is a licensed FDNP, and she's also a women's health coach specializing in functional medicine. She's been doing so for over 16 years with a vast population of different clients. She owns her own coaching team, servicing women all around the nation and even internationally. She also co-owns a company called Wholly Fueled, which helps women get a better understanding of proper nutrition and how to fuel their bodies, while still making it easy and enjoyable for themselves and the entire family. Lauren, is there anything else you'd like to add to that piece?
You did a great introduction. Thank you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to be one of your initial podcast friends invited on your show.
Absolutely.
I have so much enjoyed connecting with you. More recently working with clients to just help optimize their function. So I'm excited to just dive into that today. Some of the schools of thought that we use to really help people that other practitioners were not able to help.
Yeah.
I have been passionate about health, wellness, and fitness since I was a child. I'm so fortunate that I was born into a family that is a lot more Eastern mindset with approach to health and wellness and medicine. My dad is a chiropractor. My mom is a pioneer medical massage therapist. And so, my dad has always been into fitness. He actually judged the Mr. and Miss Universe back like multiple decades ago. So I've had people like Steve Reeves, Bill Pearl, Arnold at my house.
Amazing.
Growing up. I know, it was super cool. Dad cut a broomstick in half to make me a bench press bar when I was 5. Okay, so I cut my teeth on weights and wellness. And
You've lived and breathed this.
I have. I really have.
Your whole life.
And so very fortunate for that, didn't really realize how lucky I was until I got older.
Yeah.
Of course, growing up, teenage years where I would go to my friends' houses and we would live the night through on Chips Ahoy and Doritos. I got to start to see, hey, the world doesn't really live the way that we live.
Yeah.
But now, my dad is in his mid 80s. He's still a practicing physician. He
That's
still
awesome.
exercises 5 days a week. He is sharp, and it's really been super cool to see the longevity in my family due to just some of the lifestyle pieces that are part of the way that we live.
Yeah.
So I graduated high school a couple of years early and I actually am passionate about building business as well. So I had a path of, okay, head towards medical school or do something that landed me in the field hands-on a little sooner. My mom at that time had her first bout with breast cancer, unfortunately. And so I did a quick pivot and went to medical massage therapy school.
Yeah.
Because it was interesting to me, but also to kind of help her in her practice.
Sure.
And so, at 17 years old, my parents drove me to Virginia and dropped me off and said, bye.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I finished that program in record time, passed the boards, came back, and I have about 30 subsets of that degree.
Incredible.
Which was really cool because at the time I was becoming really passionate about bodybuilding and started to see, because I'm extremely competitive by nature. And I knew that I needed to fulfill that outlet. So I started doing bodybuilding and looking into competitions, but at the same time doing hands-on body work.
Yeah.
Which I feel like made me a really great practitioner because there's a difference, and you and I will speak to this today, there's a difference in textbook knowledge.
Sure.
And actual clinical application and being in the field. You and I speak about this frequently in regard to lab work.
Yeah.
We know what we know and what we learned in school, but both you and I have thousands of clients at this point where I'm looking at lab work over and over and over, and I know what certain applications are going to render a result in the body that's very different than what you and I learned.
Yeah.
I mean, very different might be a bit of a stretch, but knowing when you have hands-on, you know how to really fine-tune that last, 10 to 20% of helping someone optimize their function. And it was the same way in medical massage therapy for me. When you use your body, you know how to treat the body. So,
of course, I mean, there's no cookie cutter way to help a vast population of people because everyone is so individualized. And so you can have all the credentials in the world, you could have read every book, but until you get your hands on someone, in that case literally, but even with what we do now figuratively, once you're in the trenches, and like you said, it's not just 5 people, it's not even 50 people, it's hundreds to thousands of people that you gain that experience, and that takes you to the next level of, I've actually witnessed this before. I know exactly what to do.
Yes. And you and I have even done that, in working with GI protocols and seeing some of the ways that we have approached, different methodologies and optimized, depending on the protocols, normally the trickier ones, where we've, done bridges in between, or we've, started with holistic and then ended up bringing in some Western medicine integration. We've been able to really see how to best optimize the result on the back end for the patient. And that's so important.
No, it is 100%. I mean, very often in functional health, we hear, negative comments about Western medicine. And there's tons of critiques that we can make, but one of the critiques is closed-mindedness. So who are we if we're acting the same exact way and we're only keeping ourselves in this functional health bubble? So to help a bigger population in more specific cases, we expanded our mindset to, well, maybe there is a place for leveraging very specific medications or even antibiotics in a controlled, intelligent setting. Versus just, here you go, take it for 2 weeks, talk later type of situation.
Well, and that's what I really enjoy about working with you is that there's, I'll be the first to say I'm passionate about growth. I love to grow a business. I love success. I love every aspect of that. But keeping that really heartfelt, heart-centered passion about the person. And it's, it's not just a paper of lab work. You have a human being on the other side whose life is affected by certain things that change the functionality of their day. I mean, one of the cases you and I just dealt with, I mean, this woman's a realtor. She came to me because she has literally has had liquid diarrhea all day, every day for 6 years.
Oh,
and she's been to obviously I can't say her name. You would remember her intently. But with just optimizing her food, her function, daily things that she was doing that she was unaware of because she's been to this doctor, endoscopy, colonoscopy. And, they're like, oh, you've got colitis. You have inflammation. Okay, well, and no one had ever helped her fix it. I mean, Matt, within 6 weeks with the protocol that we put together, she's like, I go to the bathroom 1 time a day. And she's like, I can't tell you what you've changed in my life with, kids in tow, having to make sure that I never went anywhere that I didn't know where a bathroom was. I mean, these are
that
things
can be very
that,
stressful.
Yes, it can. But, working with another practitioner who, again, doesn't just read the paper, understands that there is a true empathic side to understanding what these people go through every day. And I know, I actually got to hear a bit of your story that I didn't know from you. I got it from Aaron.
Oh, yeah.
About, some of your, it was good. Because I feel like probably everyone who's watching this has heard that people choose their career path based on fixing themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Or someone close to them was impacted and they are passionate about that path. And we call that a C moment, significant emotional experience, right? And so, I got to hear about yours with your dad from Aaron. And, for me, again, I grew up, if you, from the outside looking in, you would think you've had it made. I mean, because I had, perfect parents doing perfect things and, all of the things that a lot of people don't grow up just knowing as second nature.
Sure.
But my significant emotional experience, I got a lot of schooling early on. I knew so much more than, most people know, just having a dad as a chiropractor and a mom as a massage therapist. And, knowing that the body is designed to heal itself and understanding every bit of this. But when I got into competing, I'm very type A, super driven, fast at what I do. I like to win. So I got into competing, and I was competing in North Carolina. And back then, you didn't just win your class, you won the overall a few times before you go to nationals. So I had a handful of overall wins, and then went to nationals. Placed 14th, which everyone was like, you placed. And, because there was like 40 girls in the class. It was so different back then. It was so different back then. So
was that the one piece era?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a one piece and a two piece. Yes, for sure. So, everyone was like, God, your first time on national stage, you got 14th. I was like, that is 13 off of where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so I was completely addicted. Failing was wonderful for me. It was such a good thing.
Drive.
But I went back, and then next year I was placing second and third, and just right there at the top. So I did a year of, I think I competed 6 or 7 national shows.
Wow.
And you know how this goes. Now, there was no coaches back then.
Yeah.
You found the oldest, biggest, gnarliest dude in the gym, and you're like, so tell me what you did, you
right.
know?
Exactly.
So you picked the brains of people who pounded the pavement, who were old era bodybuilding. And, it's just, and most of the time those were men.
Sure.
Okay? Because the women's side of the sport was so new. And we all know that female bodies don't function really well with more and harder and, eat less, do more activity.
Totally.
So for me, by the end of that year, I'm a person who's never had anxiety. I've never had, GI health issues. I had always been very, very healthy. But when you are eating super low nutrition, very little fats, I mean, we know that fats are precursors to every single steroid hormone in our body, and of course our balance of neurological function. So by the end of that year, I had developed extreme anxiety, agoraphobia. I didn't want to leave my house, or had like major, almost like panic issues leaving my house. It was very foreign to me, the way that I was feeling, and I did not feel good in my brain. So it was so hard for me to make an appointment and go to my GP, who I never saw because I was always well.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into his office fighting back tears, and he walked into the room and he's like, why are you here? I was like, I choked through the words. I was like, I'm not okay. Like, I have depression or anxiety. I don't know what this is or where it came from. He asked me no more questions. He slid me a piece of paper and he goes, answer this, I'll be right back. It was 3 questions. And he came back in and he looked at it and he goes, I think you're bipolar. Here's Seroquel, Lamictal, and we can also start with Zoloft if you want to, so he immediately, offered what he knew as far as solutions, which was, let me help you balance your brain, turn off your problems. But he asked me nothing about, well, are you sleeping? Are you eating? Are you anything? And although I wanted to feel better so badly in that moment and just feel safe in my own brain, I knew better.
Yeah.
And I just slid the paper back to him and I said, thank you so much for your time. And with tears, I stood up and walked out, and I was like, this for me, that was my significant emotional experience of, I'm going to have to save myself.
Yeah.
And so it took time for me, and I'm grateful that I knew the information, But
Yeah.
sometimes you're in such a bad spot, you need someone to just take the reins for you and be like, hey, I know what to do, but can you organize it for me? Can you
Yeah.
put it together for me?
Totally.
And so it took me, about 6 months to get my hormone health back on track, my brain function back in a good place. And I actually sat down as if I was a client I was working with,
Yeah.
and put together a program and a protocol for my own health.
Yeah.
But it really showed me in that time just the extreme connection with nutrition,
Sure.
with how your wellness
The body
is.
responds.
Yes. And
Yeah.
of course, you and I know, because it's the majority of what we do, is that the health of our gut
Yeah.
plays into such a huge factor as far as our hormonal wellness and our neurological balance
Yeah.
and wellness. And, we have more receptors in our gut than our brain.
Yep.
Our vagus nerve runs straight from our brain to our gut.
Yep.
We have so much more going on from our GI tract
Yeah.
than what we came into the world with biologically.
That's so true.
And so that was my moment. That was my moment where I was like, you know what? There are places and spaces, and I was in a dark spot. Like,
Yeah.
as a sunshiny person who is an extrovert, who has never dealt with anything like this, to see what extreme physical stress
Yeah.
and extreme dieting and extreme lifestyle changes can take who you are as a human being and completely change it.
Sure.
And so that for me was such an eye-opening moment. And from there, I have been like thirsty and unstoppable to just obtain information and help people.
Well, I think that's great. And, you obviously went through your own struggles to get there. But at the same time, imagine how much worse it could have been had you trusted that physician and got on those meds. I think there's two different types of people that I've recognized as the people who have the natural intuition and maybe the history of education to just know, ask more questions, don't just jump right into this,
Sure.
and stuff like that. And that's obviously you. Believe it or not, I actually had a similar situation. I was younger. I was just entering high school, and this is when all the talk around ADHD was really coming about. And my mom was concerned, of course. Obviously, it wasn't ADHD. I just was not interested in a lot of those subjects and the bullshit at school. But we went in and to see about, Adderall or some type of medication. And very similar situation. It's so interesting. Empty piece of paper, slides it over to me and says, draw a tree. And I do 2 lines and a bunch of squigglies. And he goes, yep, that's an ADHD tree. I'm going to prescribe you Adderall. Swear to God.
Are you serious?
And I was on Adderall through most of high school. I didn't take it every day, but I used it quite a bit. I also did Accutane in high school for acne. And I had 7 ulcers on my esophagus at the age of 20.
Sure, of course
So
you did.
between the Adderall and the
Yeah.
Accutane, we know that dysregulated everything internally. And I probably had issues even before that, but my toxic load and my burden inside my body just kept increasing. And we're talking young age, 15, 16,
right.
Not to mention what you typically do in high school and stuff. There's recreational drugs and alcohol and all that stuff that just added to my pile.
Sure. It's so interesting you talking about the ADD, ADHD thing. School was not designed for boys.
Right.
And I can say that passionately because my boys are 15 and getting ready to be 13 years old. When COVID happened, of course, everybody went home for school.
Yep.
And we never had a desire to be homeschool parents, but we never sent our kids back because
Really?
No, they're still homeschooled.
Oh, wow.
They're still homeschooled, and I watch my children hang upside down from the couch as they read or pace around the kitchen. I mean, they both have very different, which I would have never known.
Yeah.
Okay. They both have very different learning styles, One of them needs like soft music on and he absorbs everything. My 15-year-old, we've had to hire a guy from NC State to teach him because he's in 11th grade math. And what we said as parents is, hey, we'll test them at the end of every year.
Yep.
We don't know what we're doing. I mean,
Sure.
But if we see that they're falling behind, great, we'll send them back to school. They are done with school in about 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
And they are both testing 2 to 3 grades ahead in everything. And
Just the opposite of falling behind.
I am not saying that my kids are exceptionally bright. Sure, they are, we don't have any learning challenges.
Sure.
But they are able to learn in a way that is not socially acceptable in school, which is through movement.
Yep.
And, it's funny because in massage school, there was such a concept of, hey, movement, if you are moving while you are listening, you are much more likely to retain and actually put it in your cells what you are hearing and what you are being exposed to. And I really see that with my kids. But I can't imagine, I mean, sure, the information is so boring. Yeah. And we expect...
And how it's brought to you, too.
Yes, and we expect kids to sit still for 8 to 9 hours a day. And, but almost every kid, and you know this because I'm collabing with you on a lot of these, is we're seeing Vyvanse, Adderall, basically let me make your body comply to the box.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's sad. It's wild.
It is. Well, and we've seen this a lot. It's coming out a lot more lately that it's when you look at it as a business model in America, the most profitable situation possible is starting a kid on medications young. Mm-hmm. Because then you double the chances of more medications down the line. Mm-hmm. And so instead of getting a customer at 50 who might be with you for 35 years, now you have a customer for 75 years. Mm-hmm. And it's an unfortunate truth about the business model side of our healthcare system.
Sure.
But also, I think it really emphasizes the need for change in our education system.
Yes.
And how, it's kind of like what we said, there's no cookie cutter approach to education. And I think the big argument with homeschooling that was always about, because homeschooling used to have like this very negative connotation to it.
Yeah,
it's like
kids were weird.
Those are weird
Those are weird kids.
Yeah. Now it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Now it's like the ones going to college are fucking weird.
Yeah.
But I think the argument, which was valid, was the lack of socializing and stuff like that. But you have your kids in pursuing jiu-jitsu, you have your kids going to the gym and working out. Mm-hmm. They still socialize a lot when they're not studying and learning.
A ton.
So it's just about, it's not like you're saying keep them locked in their home all day. They still have to socialize. They still have to do all those things. But are they really getting the optimal learning education inside that school environment? And what we're seeing lately is oftentimes no.
Sure. Well, there's so many distractions.
Yeah.
There's so many distractions. I mean, we could get off on that tangent for a while, but there's, dress code distractions. There's a lot of kids right now that are just mean, I mean, so being able to, I don't want to say control my kids' environment because, I make sure that they are exposed to lots of things.
Yeah, you don't coddle them.
At all. Not at all.
Yeah.
And, we have really put them into a ton of athletics because that's what they love. We tried all the music and all the things, but as with two athletic parents, I mean, they're going to be more inclined to do anything that moves their body. Yeah. And, youth group and things like that. But I get responses from, because we did kind of start to do a hybrid with some of their schooling. And the teachers always comment on, the kids just, wow, they are so responsive. They look you in the eye and know how to have a conversation.
Wow.
Where these are things that it's a missing art that is happening in the world today. And it's kind of wild to see the shifts and changes. And listen, I I hate it for the people out there who, both parents are working very normal jobs and can't do and couldn't offer that to their children.
Yeah.
But just understanding that there's different learning styles and being able to move your body. I mean, back to what you were saying, but we are seeing a lot of medications in use. We are seeing that render itself to toxic load. When a client comes to me and I'm start to understand who they are as a person and what their goals are, and then really looking at the lifestyle pieces that they're struggling with, I always tell them, hey, your body is smarter than your dumb ideas. Our bodies, because I mostly coach women, I would say it's 75-25. But, our bodies look for homeostasis.
Yeah.
And when you show up to your physician, and I'm not saying that Western medicine is wrong. There is a time and a space and a place and a need for all of the development that we have there and the medications that we have there.
Yeah.
Grateful for it.
Yep.
But when you take these things and you are just, as a physician, you are like, hey, I'm going to cover up this symptom with this pill. The body looks to create balance and is always looking for homeostasis.
Yeah.
So, I have a case that I took on recently. The girl is a teenager and she was put on Adderall. Of course, that changed her appetite. Mm-hmm. So now she is, her hair's falling out because she's not hungry, right? So we have a lack of macronutrient, like a lack of calories, basically. Yeah. And of course, the micronutrients that she's getting is diminished as well, because we know even at the best nutrition right now in our world, we're not getting a ton of nutrients from our soil like we used to.
Right.
So her being put on Adderall lended to this cascade. She now had hair falling out, skin issues, lots of disorders, which ended up starting a thyroid issue, okay? Because the body's looking for balance, right? Yeah. So that ended up causing a thyroid issue that threw off her menstrual cycles now because we have a thyroid issue. And also, she wasn't able to sleep at night because she's taking
stimulants.
Amphetamines.
Methamphetamine.
Yeah, amphetamines in the morning so that she can comply with the focus structure of school. Yeah. And so that she can perform with excellence, okay? Yeah. But now she is on a thyroid medication, a sleep drug, and having, now they're looking at, does she have PCOS? Like, what are we causing with her internal reproductive organs? Yeah. All because it started with not taking the time to understand, helping her, like putting together some lifestyle things to help her focus while she's at school. Yeah. And so now, now that her parents are like, whoa, we have a 16-year-old on 4 medications. Should we look at this? Yeah. Should we, so I get the phone call and they're like, we'll fix her. Yeah. And how fast can you do it? Right? Yeah. So, and it's, it's really working with these people step by step and unwinding the dysfunction of where, they have landed. And of course, as we go through all of this, we run the GI map and because of the toxic burden. Yes, because of the toxic burden. Yeah. Now we have leaky gut. Now we have some overgrowths of bacteria and things in the mix as well, which of course is affecting cognitive function. Yeah. So it probably started with potential. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but it probably started with GI issues. Totally. That were changing, the way that her brain was working. Yep. And that was just not looked at because it's like, hey, let me look at the symptom that you have that you don't like. Right. So that's kind of one of my favorites is just reminding people, hey, your body is smarter than your dumb ideas. Right. And it's going to look for homeostasis and it's going to look for balance. I see that a lot with women who, want to be a certain size, want to be a certain body fat, want to look a certain way. They starve their bodies into submission or they try really hard to over-exercise it off or to run it off. Yeah. And then, then they end up and it always works the first time. Matt, know this.
Shocking the body.
Yes, it works the first time. And that, that pathway of being, I'm missing the word, but that high level of cortisol that, really renders that beautiful result, the first diet that people do.
The honeymoon period of dieting.
Exactly. Yeah. Now the body's got your number and it's like, wait, This woman is trucking through the desert with not enough food, running from the bad guys constantly. She's constantly stressed out. We're not getting enough nutrition.
Yeah.
Okay, hypothalamus talks to the thyroid gland, says, hey, let's downregulate everything.
Yep.
Because we need to keep her alive.
Right.
And so, of course, I have a biology degree, and I share with people often, hey, don't hate the messenger, but biologically, your body prioritizes keeping your ass alive.
Yep.
Okay. So making sure that you have enough nutrients to beat your heart, make sure that you have proper respiration, be able to do all of these autonomic functions that are behind the curtain that you don't think about all day long. So, you not drinking enough water, you not doing these things, your body's going to hold it. It's going to make gauges for what you are doing to it.
Yep.
So that is piece number one. And then as a female, the second biological function is that it's going to prioritize what?
Survival
And fertility.
Yeah.
Right? And so, when you starve yourself into submission that first time, you're like, why did I pack on all this body fat? Because your body is making sure that you've got the hormonal aspect in place that you can sustain life on the planet, potentially, when you're not running from the axe murderer chasing you.
Well, and I think that's huge because in a woman's body, like you just said, the body is not just thinking about the woman, it's also always taking in consideration the potential of a child.
Absolutely.
A lot of people in modern day life don't really think about how the body started out, So when we rewind things thousands of years, the main priority of a woman's body is procreation and fertility. And so even if that's not your concern in 2024, that's still the body's thought process and how the body's going to interact. And we always have to keep in mind the old school rules that we all learned in science class. For every action, there's a reaction. And the body is extremely good at adapting to reactions. And most of the dysfunction we see in modern day life is adaptations to some type of action that occurred or something that occurred internally in the body, things accumulating over time. I think what everyone can benefit from, male or female, young or old, is taking a step back and just saying, well, why might this be happening? When did this start? What changed around that same timeline? And start kind of a breadcrumb trail.
Sure.
And that's what we do with a lot of people. Sometimes it's not easy to analyze that yourselves.
Sure.
And obviously we have the education. So when we ask someone, tell me about the last 10 years of your life, we're able to pinpoint those things.
Right. We're not standing in the forest, in the center of the forest, and can't see the trees. We have this, global perspective that we're able to kind of piece together for people. And then another conversation that is so important that I tell my clients often is, hey, you are not immune to the human condition. I do feel like in 2024, there's this expectation of high level function all the time.
Yeah.
And being very robotic. Yes, being very robotic about you should be able to wake up every single morning, be sharp, be on, have high sex drive, have, lean muscle mass. You should be able to do all these things. Says who?
Right.
Says who when.
Right.
And if you're seeing these people, they're either right around the corner from a crash, or you need to, have them tell you truthfully all of the things that they're on to do that.
Yeah, to accomplish that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, making my clients understand, hey, if you've had disrupted sleep for the last 2 weeks, yes, your energy's going to be low.
Yeah.
It is.
Makes total
that's
sense.
That's like you coming in and going, hey, I'm going to upgrade the engine of this car, but I've got 4 flat tires. It's like making sure that people understand that, hey, it's the really boring. Yeah. It's the really boring pillars of health, the really boring lifestyle things that make us human, that we have to play on repeat for you to be exceptional. If you want to be extra, if you want to be exceptional, master the boring.
Yeah.
And play them on repeat.
Yeah.
And, that's the part that is, I feel like a little bit more difficult for people these days, is just that level of consistency.
I agree. Consistency and understanding the definition of balance.
Sure. Yes.
When we talk, I think everyone has a different thought process or perception of the term balance in modern day life. But that's something that we obviously preach a lot. And I think a major issue that people have is differentiating emotional decisions and rational decisions. And in order to create balance, you have to be at least partially rational and not 100% emotional, because emotionally, I want to work out 7 days a week. I have so much to do. I don't want to get sleep, you know, and then I just want to compensate with energy drinks and, to biohack. And so those are all emotional decisions. And then we wonder why we crash. Like you said, it works until it doesn't.
Sure.
That diet worked until it didn't.
Well, and then and I know that you see this too. It's like, okay, well, that one Monster drink worked and now it doesn't. So I need two. Yeah. Right. And so instead of, using these things to kind of step in when we know that we're not doing the best we can, but we know it's short lived. And then being like, okay, the one's not working anymore. Maybe I should prioritize sleep a little bit more. But no, it's like, okay, well then more has to be better. Like, let me just go all in here.
Yeah. Well, and that's so common in the people that we look up to and that we look to for knowledge and advice. Our medical system and the higher ups, that's their tactic. If 10 milligrams of Adderall isn't enough, what do? We do 20 milligrams. So that's where obviously that's going to trickle down to I guess you could call it the common man. And I think that's where you and I come in as this beacon of different mindsets, a different perception or a different approach to addressing the same goal. And the number one difference is we're not dealing with corporate capture. We don't have some business no one's paying us to push certain products. No one's, we're not benefiting off of specific treatment options or anything like that. So we are just out there with the sole focus of getting them better and addressing the root cause so that they don't need more medications. And that's obviously the biggest difference.
Sure. And then in that process, again, another thing that I have enjoyed about collabing with you, in that process, really showing people, hey, yes, we're working to get you healed, whatever that is. We're working to get your body back to, optimizing function. But you can't go back to what you did to get you here in the first place. So really helping people, implement those lifestyle strategies that we show up and we play on repeat and keep in place as prevention. I mean, understanding it's an old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
I mean, so keeping some of those things in place for balance. And listen, I will be very open and transparent. And I know, you and I are cut from the same cloth. We are driven, type A, get it done. I mean, sever a limb to get us to stop type people. And so I think that both you and I, being driving forces, in our own businesses and lives and things like that, we can speak to that probably better than anyone else because we've been there. We've dug the hole of, different for both you and I, but we've been in places of not so great health. And actually, I mean, again, I'll speak very openly here. A few years back, I had gone through several years of high stress, high emotional stress for me. I know how, I know GI function. I know how to do a GI protocol. I hired you. I called you and I was like, Matt, take this from me. Because I knew a few things. I feel like anybody who's coaching you have to respect them.
Sure.
You have to feel like they at least know as much as you, if not a little bit more.
Sure.
So and I don't collab with people often. I mean, I'm very particular about, and that's not a judgmental thing, but I need to align with people that I bring into my sphere of health and wellness. And so I reached out to you and I was like, hey, Matt, I know I'm not good right now. I know my GI function is off. I don't even, and I was about to be like, okay, Matt, I know I need to run a GI map. And I was like, tell me, I'm actually going to be coachable. Tell me what to do.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I gave you the reins on that, and really being able to, as a type A, red personality, high drive person, to know that needing coaches or needing assistance does not make you weak at all. It actually makes you extremely intelligent.
Yeah.
To know, but it's about who you choose to be in your corner, and are they watching out for every aspect of your health?
Right.
Are they just writing a protocol and not paying attention to you anymore?
Right.
Are they making sure that every juncture, and I don't mean daily check, you weren't texting me at 6 a.m. being like, Lauren, have a great day, go crush it.
Right.
There's personal responsibility that comes into managing your own health. So just because you hire a coach doesn't mean that you can check out and be like, just because he wrote me the plan, I guess I'll rub this paper on me and it'll make me all better. No, you actually have to do your part, and your part is 95% of the plan that gets written for you.
Yeah.
But I needed to not coach me.
Yeah.
And even though I've been my own coach for every single time that I've stepped on stage, every overall win, earning my pro card, I coached me. So I felt capable of doing that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I was like, this is a juncture, like, I'm sure you're going to add things that I do not know, and you did, and really helped me in so many ways get back to where I knew I needed to be. But also, it's so interesting when you are living a life of dysfunction, and I wasn't even, it wasn't like the girl that I spoke about earlier, I didn't need to know where all the bathrooms were. I just knew something was off.
Yeah.
I know what, in my brain, I knew what being well felt like, and
Yeah.
it just didn't feel well.
Yeah.
And so when I said to you, hey, tell me what to do, like, I'm yours. Like, do what we need. And you're like, hey, we're going to run these labs, and we're going to do a GI map. And, you put my protocol together. I knew that just being able to hand you the reins and just take care of, like, just execute, like, one checkbox at a time.
Right.
And that's all I needed to think about. And I didn't realize until I got to the end how bad I felt in the beginning.
Same here.
Because you kind of start to slowly accept what, a little bit of low energy here feels like, a little bit of, what was that word I was looking for?
Yeah.
Or just being a little bit off here, a little off there. When I got to the end of the protocol that you and I did together, I felt fan-fucking-tastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, everyone
This
deserves,
is living.
Everyone deserves this.
Yeah.
Everyone deserves this.
Yeah.
But, even my hormones have always been high and healthy, almost a little bit obnoxiously so. But doing a GI protocol, I mean, everything ramped up for me. I was like, whoa, like I feel 20 again. This is wild. And so really to live seeing that connection, because I do think good coaches have to, we have to do the things we preach.
We do. And I mean, I'll tell you personally, and in all of my experience, I've been one of my own worst clients. Like, I am a terrible client to myself. And I learned that a while ago. Did I do pretty good, when it came to progressive overload training and building muscle? Sure. But looking back, I probably would have even done better if I just let go of the reins and trusted someone else. And especially when it came to my internal health journey, I trusted other people the same way you did. I knew that if I try to do this, I'm going to stress myself out more.
Sure.
And I may miss something.
Sure.
And so let's get a completely different perspective. I know what I know, but maybe there's someone else who just has a slightly different perspective, or they slightly different experiences, like we've talked about. And so I've, Austin Stout, Mayor Patchy, a lot of functional coaches who now we consider colleagues, helped me back in the day, and even helped me gauge some new perspectives on things. And I think something that resonated with me, and I think it also came to fruition with you, is also just because we are high performance people, we push ourselves and we have knowledge, sometimes we need to be checked.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we just need to be humbled and checked and said, no.
Yes.
Do this. Because and Austin did that to me. And there were times I did that to you.
You did it to me.
But it comes from a place of care.
Yeah, it does.
If we didn't care, we'd say, sure, go, keep fucking around.
It does, but again, I think that's why it's so important that you pick a coach, because there's not many people that would tell me no that I'd be like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so,
fine.
Yeah. And so there were a few emails that I sent you that I'm like, so are you sure about this training? And you're like, no. And actually, you knew me well enough to know if I give her a long explanation, it ain't gonna go anywhere. You were like, no. I was just like, okay, okay, fine. And it was like you'd answer with a one sentence. It was exactly what I needed. I was like, okay.
Well, and something that we both do really well with our clients is, we stand strong because we know that's what we need, but we also remind them, like, you've been doing this and you've been feeling better.
Yes.
Don't break that cycle.
Yes.
Keep enjoying the good feelings.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And, I actually, through my GI protocol, which is not a body recomp plan. So
right.
I have to remind clients of that so frequently. Hey, this is not for you to have abs at the end.
Right.
It's not. But and that was actually one of the emails that I sent you about, are you sure that I have to do this training? But in me taking a step back and doing more of a reps and reserve methodology, which is what we chose for me for my protocol, I looked like I was about to step on stage at the end of my GI protocol, from getting my gut cleared up, from lowering stress, from, doing all of those things that, again, I was in the middle of the forest, couldn't see the trees.
Right.
And that's why it is so important to have someone in your corner. But not only that, you and I are the same in this, but I'll speak to you. You coach hard, but you love hard too.
I do.
And so, I am the same with my clients. I have no problem being like,
you are.
No.
Yeah.
But I will be your biggest cheerleader.
Sure.
I mean, I will set, like, your win feels like my win.
Yeah, totally.
And, that's about understanding the people and, getting, again, just being able to read the person that you're working, and knowing them well.
Yeah.
Knowing what their
Clicking
goals
with
are.
them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, no, that was definitely a fun venture. And I knew that I needed to test that with you first before I started collabing, some of our people together and bringing you into a space and a place to help with some of my hormonal optimization with clients.
Yeah.
And again, I've worked with several MDs through the years. And, I don't want to speak badly about the medical community, and I appreciate every single MD that I've worked with. But a lot of them knew that I knew 100% what I was doing.
Yeah.
And they let me manage a lot of the things that, and not that they shouldn't have, but again, when you partner with people, it's about taking multiple brilliant minds and bringing that force together for the person you're helping.
Yeah.
And so, really making sure that you're not missing.
Yeah.
You're just not missing with people. And I think, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so are you.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah.
And I know every single person that our hands are on, they appreciate it because it's an experience that they've not had before.
Yeah.
So,
we hear that literally every week.
Yeah. We do.
This is a very fresh experience for them in comparison to what they've done in the past. And I always want to be clear that we actually aren't pointing fingers at physicians. We're more so pointing fingers at the system.
Sure.
And the capturing of the system. So just to quickly think about that, these physicians, the med school curriculum is written by Big Pharma. So they're set up for failure from square one in regards to what they're educated on. That education costs $500,000. Then they're told, if you just put your head down and do what we say, you'll make back that money and have a wonderful life. It takes a different type of person to go through all that and say, well, now I want more knowledge. And now I want to, kind of go against the grain, not secure that 7-figure income.
Well, you don't know what you're not taught.
Exactly.
And so that's where we get into, a little bit of a situation with MDs, and there's nothing wrong with, well, there is, but follow me here. Most of the people in the world are going to do exactly what they are taught.
Yeah.
It takes a different breed of person to think for themselves and to take the big picture and start to put the puzzle pieces together.
Yep.
People who show up in life and want more.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is good. That's great.
What's next?
That's awesome. How do I take this to outstanding?
Yeah.
And that's a 1%.
Yeah.
Being outstanding and going to that level is a 1% difference. And, that's the piece to me that matters,
Yeah.
is because we can get you okay.
Right.
We can make it to where life doesn't suck.
Right. Reduce your symptoms.
Right. But how do we take you to outstanding?
Right.
And so the medical community, that you're right, they are taught exactly what they're taught. And for the majority of people who go, okay, this is what I was taught, this is what I believe, then they go practice that. Now, I do feel sorry for them a bit in their defense. There's a lot of humans that show up, they don't want to change their lifestyle.
Exactly.
They want a drug. And so
Exactly.
they are given the tools, the toolbox of, hey, here's your blood pressure medication, here's your this, because they know potentially, hey, this person's going to walk out the door and walk right back to their couch and sit down
Right.
and drink their Pepsi and, do their Doritos and things that they do, and they're not going to change.
This is the best I can offer.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so for those people, they're prolonging their life
Yeah.
a little longer and making, their dysfunction a little maybe less dysfunctional.
Yeah.
But, for the people who are like, hey, I'll do the work. Like, I'll do the work. Those are the people that are really being underserved, not served at all.
Not served, yeah.
Not served.
Let's dive into this even deeper. How much of a percentage do you think is affected by, especially in the modern day world, risk of medical malpractice lawsuits and also insurance companies basically coming back and attacking the doctor, like, why did you do this?
In what scenario? Attacking the doctor in the sense of
And
just
not medicating. Instead of medicating, putting their foot down and
Oh,
saying,
are you kidding
now
me?
you need to fix your life.
Oh, like
Do you think doctors are scared
absolutely.
to do that?
As they
Yeah.
should be. As they should be.
Yeah.
Because if there's a miss,
Right.
then that's on you.
Exactly.
And you were told
Right.
that this person should have left with a
XYZ.
statin.
Yeah.
They should have left with something to lower their heart rate. They should have left with XYZ.
Now you're negligent.
Yes,
Even
absolutely.
though you brought up sleep, nutrition,
yes.
lifestyle.
Well, because what the tools that MDs are given are the things that they can control.
Yes.
Which is interesting because you can't control the person swallowing the pill, but that is the path of least resistance, right?
Yeah.
I mean, getting someone to walk around the block is going to be a lot harder than swallow this pill.
Yeah.
But 100%.
Yeah.
Because that's going to fall on the last person
Yeah.
that didn't do what the textbook tells them to do.
It's an unfortunate piece of the puzzle. And I think it's great that we go over this because I think a lot of people just think that like their doctor is super negligent and hates them or something like that. And don't get me wrong. There's bad doctors, there's bad lawyers, there's bad police, there's bad everything. So there's going to be bad seeds. But we're talking about the way the general system also sets us up for failure. And we're focusing on Western medicine as a whole in that regard. And yeah, I mean, I think you brought up great points.
There are some friends. So I see it on the flip side this way. There are some fringe physicians that after the person has come to me and said, hey, I want to be off of the 4 things that I'm on. And then they go back to the doctor and they, have improved these items. I'll hear some fringe physicians be like, wow, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Yeah.
So there's some MDs that will celebrate that. But then, I mean, since we're in this topic, I have to bring it up. The client that, I brought to the clinic recently who has been diagnosed with liver dysfunction and is in a liver study and has been for over a decade on a experimental drug. And so she's on a myriad of medications, which, we know because they've put her on, again, the body creates or is looking for homeostasis. So, they lowered her heart rate. Okay, well then guess what? If you don't have the circulation that you should have, so she's on multiple meds. And we started doing, we did a GI map with her. We mapped out the plan for her, and I started implementing that with her and putting things in place. She did her lab work not even 3 months in. And for the first time in 15 years, her liver enzymes are in range.
Crazy.
And she puts that in front of the doctor because she's worked her ass off. she has done the damn thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, she was like, what do you think about this? He goes, it must have been a lab error. So she tells him, she's like, hey, I'm doing a GI protocol. I've changed my nutrition. I'm walking 10,000 steps a day. I am really working on my, my past trauma and stress. Like, she's doing it. And so she shares all this with him, and she's like, aren't you excited about my labs? Now, this is a woman who's strong but a little fragile, because she feels like she's been overlooked by her doctors. And so she wanted him to be like, wow, gosh, whatever you're doing. The woman's down 20 pounds. She's like, all biomarkers are moving in the right direction. And he goes, must be a lab error.
Insane. And
she walked out of there, and I actually am surprised at what that did to her as a person. Who I knew when we first started working together would have been deflated. She walked out of there pissed off and on fire.
Wow.
Because she feels so much better already.
Yeah.
And she's, there's a different energy that shows up when you do the work. When you do the work for yourself, you show up a little less permeable.
And you saw the fruits of that later.
Yes. Yeah. And so she's like, screw them. She's like, let's keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
She's like, I want 50 pounds gone. She's like, we're getting me off of all meds. And we've shelved like 6 of them.
That's
and
incredible.
It's awesome. But it's, I do feel like, back to your original question, I do feel like there's a ton of pressure for medical practitioners to do as they're told.
Yeah. Well, and I recently learned that a lot of these systems basically set it up that they're almost being paid per patient. So it behooves you to take care of more patients per day. That's how you're going to get your salary to what we consider a physician's salary.
Sure.
You and I, on our busiest days, realistically, maybe connect with 7 to 10 people at the most. I think physicians connect with 50 to 100 people sometimes.
Yep.
How can you give appropriate care? How can you talk about sleep, nutrition, and stress, and actually explain to them their blood work seeing that many people? It's an impossible system.
You can't.
Yeah.
You can't, and that's that's super sad.
Yeah.
It really is. I know, like, think about the lab data that you and I go through, and you don't know who's scheduled if you were the MD, you don't know who's scheduled on your roster for that day.
No, it's literally like, okay, who's this?
Oh, but can you imagine? For you and I to go through lab work the way that you and I like to go through lab work, which is line by line.
Yeah.
We're on the phone with a patient for, at the least 30 minutes.
At least.
At least. And that's if they have things that are very straightforward and not a ton of health history.
Yep.
But normally we are all over an hour.
Yeah, 60 to 90 minutes.
Yes, because no one comes, with dysfunction, which is why someone would be at the doctor, okay? No one comes with dysfunction with no backstory.
Right.
At all. So, and
they deserve to know why. They don't just deserve to know a diagnosis. They need to know why.
Well, when you know why, you're able to actually fix it.
Yeah.
Change. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, you can implement change, because a lot of times people don't know why they ended up in the position that they're in.
Which means they're going to do it again.
Correct. Yes. Yes. I feel like I took for granted knowing so much about the body, being, growing up in the household that I grew up in.
Yeah.
So I really have to check myself from time to time of like, hey, I met a grown woman last week that didn't realize that you couldn't get pregnant the whole month. But hey, if you never learned that, never are told that,
Right.
you were just given birth control at 13, 14 years old.
Yeah.
And you've been on it your whole life to evade pregnancy, like she just...
It does seem
Never knew.
like the way they kind of, if you're completely, uneducated and just naive to how the body works, and you pay attention to what they talk about in regards to birth control and abortion, and especially in cities and more rural areas, it does seem like you can get, like, pregnancy happens just all the time.
Sure.
And it can happen at any time. But then we have so many people who are working their ass off, spending tons of money to get pregnant, and it's not that easy, even when everything is perfect.
And if you actually dissect that process, the fact that anyone is alive on the planet is mind-blowing.
Yeah, there's a lot of luck happening.
Yes.
Some would consider it bad luck, but when you actually understand, like, wow, like, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, there were some things that had to align here.
Totally.
Really...
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Going back to your history as a coach,
Mm-hmm.
how do you personally communicate with women regarding the link to hormones, gut health, and weight loss? Because we know, the majority of women, their focus is body image and weight loss. And of course, the advertisements, social media, everyone's pushing us in that direction.
Sure.
So what is your approach to explain to them the deeper seated situation?
Well, I always like to start out with realism.
Yeah.
Because that is really important. And I see this often with women. We're inundated by social media.
Yeah.
And if we are paying attention, which we all are, we're seeing women who are single digit body fat or low teen body fat with
veins in their abs,
gorgeous
capped
bodies,
delts.
all of those things, right? And we're like, well, why don't I look like that?
Yep.
And so there's always a real conversation that begins the conversation of, hey, we all come into this world with a genetic predisposition of what our bodies will and will not look like.
Yep.
And I explain that to them in the sense of like, hey, I don't have long femurs. I'm never going to change that.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if I take drugs or growth hormone or whatever.
Specific workouts.
Sure.
Doesn't change.
It doesn't matter. No, it's not going to change it.
Yeah.
So understanding that your genetic predisposition of, how your hips are shaped,
Yep.
How your rib cage is shaped. My ethnicity on my mom's side is German. Our rib cages are as big as our hips. Like, we are solid people. I will never have an hourglass shape.
Yeah.
Understanding and making sure that the woman's goals are realistic is always first.
That's a great point.
Because otherwise, they are going to do everything right and be unhappy.
Great point.
So that's always kind of piece number one. I make sure that I'm dealing with someone who if they need to be lightly reframed, okay. Yeah. But making sure that their goals are realistic is always important, because as a coach, my goal is to take you from your point A to your point B.
Yeah.
And I never want to sell you the pipe dream of getting there if it's not a realistic expectation. So
I love that.
That's always the piece that is super important. And then the next piece that I talk about is the realism of, hey, we either want this body and we do what it takes lifestyle wise to go get it.
Yep.
Or you have a lifestyle that you're unwilling to compromise, and we put together the things that support and fit your life to where you can sustain this long term, and then you're really happy with the body that creates.
Yeah.
So there has to be a bridging the gap between, hey, what does it take for you to be single digit body fat? I've been single digit body fat. You could draw draw blood off of my abs from across the room when I was competing. I don't want to live that life anymore.
Oh, no.
I don't want to, it's just, do I love being lean and in a strong body? Absolutely. Yeah. But for me right now in life, I've bridged the gap between, hey, I don't want to spend 90 minutes on a treadmill every day. I just don't.
Right.
But I do understand that I can hold a really beautiful physique if I don't fuck up my nutrition all the time.
Totally.
And as a nutritionist, I have to, I mean, I'm no longer willing to compromise my energy. I'm a mom and I'm running multiple businesses. I will not compromise my energy and my wellness and my function because that is selfish and not fair for the people around me that I love. So
I love that.
It is really important. Like, that's a non-negotiable for me. Drinking my water every day, making sure that I get lab work done often, and making sure that, you know, I'm catching any type of miss of optimization. And then my nutrition, I hate to cook. Hate it. But I cook 99% of what goes in my mouth.
Yeah.
And because of Holy Fueled, where we do all of this stuff for women, I mean, I will always practice what I preach. I think that that is vital and very important. So making sure, that's the next piece is, okay, are we realistic? And then making sure, do you actually have the bandwidth to accomplish what you want to accomplish? And then, you know, because I've been doing this for so long, I can pretty much gauge, hey, this is the time frame that you're looking at as far as making that happen. And then if the person's goals are unrealistic, like if they want to be ripped and like, I just want to look really freaking hot this summer on the boat, I'm like, okay, great. But then when we hit fall, we're going to kind of do a reverse and bring up your metabolic function. Because guess what? If you're eating 1,300 calories every week on repeat, that's not your deficit. That's now your maintenance.
Yeah.
So making sure that women understand that, again, our bodies are smarter than our dumb ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. So your body's going to constantly look for homeostasis and making sure that the plan that we put in place is going to support them long term.
Yeah.
And, you know, letting them know, hey, I'll go in the trenches with you. Like, you want to pound this thing out. You want to look super hot and sexy. Great. But you've got to promise me that you're not going to bail on the back end work.
Yeah, sooner or later, we got to reverse that.
Sure. So making sure that, you know, those pieces are aligned for me are really important up front. And then, you know, the next piece is really just, you know, putting together the lifestyle pieces, putting together the program to make sure that, you know, those things are happening and they're happening intelligently.
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke about, you know, my neurological dysfunction earlier from over dieting. And so for different people, they have different needs, different macronutrient needs. Some people can run with fats really high, carbs low. They feel better that way. It's awesome. It's great. Some people, you take their fats low.
Yeah.
I mean, you're dealing with a monster.
Yeah.
So you have to really understand and learn the woman, which gratefully, again, I've been doing this a long time, so I can do that pretty quick. But, and then from that, you know, the parts that you can control have to be in balance first, for then you to see, like, because I can normally spot it pretty quickly. Do we have GI dysfunction here?
Yeah.
Do we have hormonal imbalance?
Right.
And really, I mean, I can kind of spot that on their intake form.
Totally.
From the
Ask
beginning,
the right
which is,
questions.
ask the right questions and make sure that you understand the person that you're working with.
Yeah.
But I will say, you know, women normally have a solid pulse beat on if something is off.
Yeah, I agree.
I think because we are cyclical by nature, we know, you know, we ride the roller coaster all the time. So if our roller coaster takes an upside down turn when that wasn't normally the path of our roller coaster, we know it.
Sure.
And so I will have women come to me and go, hey, something's off.
Yeah.
Like, something's off. And what I do love, and I'm seeing more of, and it's a beautiful thing now, is I'm seeing more women kind of catch their hormonal dysfunction in their early 40s. And being able to kind of bolster themselves through that perimenopause phase.
Smooth it out.
Yeah. And then, like, they don't go through menopause, like this whole nightmare thing that it gets pitched as.
Right.
Or for a lot of women that they experience it as being, you know, so awful. I had a question this morning on our Holy Fueled live Q&A, because we do a live Q&A each week. And the woman is 41 years old. They're running multiple businesses. She's like, I love my husband. I want to fuck him. She's like, but at the end of the day, I've taken care of kids all day. She's like, I'm exhausted. She's like, help me. Because again, I want to show up like I felt in my early 20s. And so our conversation with her, we've helped her, get body fat and off and optimize, her body. She's feeling great, but that's the last piece. And so, for her, really understanding the balance of, and you and I have this conversation often with clients. Hey, it's 2024. Our bodies weren't made for 2024.
Totally.
They were not made to be on go from the second our feet hit the floor. And her, managing 4 children, 2 businesses,
That's
making
insane.
sure her husband's taken care of,
Yeah.
getting kids home, 4 different levels of homework, get everybody in bed, fix dinner, all of the things. And of course, she wants to work out and feel good in her body as well.
Yeah.
So I tell women, you have to understand the baseline of hormonal balance is like a seesaw. You have cortisol on one side and DHEA on the other, which DHEA sits above all of our other sex hormones as far as creation of them. And if your cortisol level's high like this,
what's the rest doing?
Yeah, I mean your sex drive is where you feel it, which is non-existent. I mean, there is nothing going on down there because you're running from an axe murderer every single day. Cortisol is designed for you to run from the bear, pick the car up off your kids, save your freaking life.
Yep.
And so what cortisol does by molecular structure is shunt blood to our skeletal muscle tissue so that we can be superhuman and run from the bear and pick the car up off of our kid.
Yep.
It does not care if your vagina is wet.
Right.
At all. Not at all. I mean,
Great explanation.
it just doesn't.
Yeah.
So talking
It's
to
not
her,
a priority.
Right. And so for someone like that, making sure as a practitioner that you're doing things right, because there are practitioners that'll be like, hey, let me slap you on a bunch of hormones.
Of course.
And
fat burners.
And fat burners. And let's ignore everything that you're doing every day that is making it to where your body does not function well sexually.
Totally.
It's about achieving balance.
Yeah.
And so with her, we're going to work on getting her a little bit more level.
Yeah.
And then seeing at that point, hey, do we need to support hormone function?
Yeah.
Is this something that is responsible to address at this time?
Yeah.
Or is this just, a section of your life where you're going to be running and gunning?
Yeah.
Sure, we can support you in different ways, but to come in with like full HRT because we're missing sexual function without addressing what's driving that down. Sure.
Yeah.
So, I think just realistic expectations, making sure that the plan makes sense for the person, making sure that they understand their bodies. Because women are not little men.
Right.
It would be awesome if we were. I mean, gosh, I love dieting a man. It's pretty, I don't want to take away credit from you guys because y'all have a lot going on too, but a lot less.
It's easier. It's
a lot
just
less,
easier,
sure.
hands
And
down.
so, but for women, making sure that they understand that it is about balance.
Sure.
So
I love all the points you made, and 2 things come to mind. I think it's important that men and women, every person listening, realizes that achieving your dream goal is far different than maintaining your dream goal.
Good point.
So you are going to have to do some extra work, some extra sacrifice to get there. But if you learn the appropriate tools along the way, once you're there, it's not nearly as daunting. It's not nearly as sacrificial. It's much easier to maintain that. And so I think that's very important, of separating the two, of getting there, getting to your destination versus staying in your destination. Sure. I think the other thing is, to your point, how every single person's situation is so different. And this also plays into who we pay attention to on social media and stuff. The girl who has a sugar daddy and she doesn't work, all she does is sleep, go to the gym, and then meal prep on her TikTok, she has a very low stress life, and it's very easy for her to exercise and diet and check those boxes.
Sure.
The woman you mentioned with 4 kids, 2 businesses, showing up for her husband, she can't do what that TikToker can do.
No.
So don't compare yourself. You need a whole different plan and a whole different approach compared to that woman.
Sure. And, I shamelessly tell women, hey, if you're following people on your social media feed that every time you see their stuff makes you feel inferior, it's time to unfollow. It's time to unfollow for a while.
Yeah.
And even though some of those things can be inspiring and we can step back and we can be like, damn, she's hot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think if that immediately sends your brain into what do I need to do more of? Why am I not enough? I will never look like her. Could I look like her? I wonder if she's taking Ozempic.
Yeah.
Like if it spirals like that, it's time to disengage.
Yep. That's a great point.
There was something brought to my attention recently, and I've really shifted this. It was hard for a split second. So I had a friend of mine, actually a guy friend, and he's like, "Hey, why do you filter your stories?" And I was like, "Because I don't put makeup on ever, and I'm running a business, and I like to put, look a little put together." He's like, "Yeah, it makes you look nothing, but it makes you look like nothing except like inferiorly self-conscious." And he's like, I feel like now this guy is younger than me, like a decade younger than me. He's like, yeah, this is definitely how my generation looks at it, is like, be real. And I was like, dude, it's like, it is the filter called no filter. I'm like, it is not like, I didn't change the shape of my nose or my cheekbones or whatever. He's like, yeah, ditch it. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try that, because this is uncomfortable for me, because I hate that you just kicked my chair. Like, I was pissed for a half a second. I was like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
You're a guy. Y'all look great all screwed up or whatever. Like, you look great, hot and sweaty.
Slap a beard on it and you're good.
Totally. So I was like, okay, challenge accepted. And I actually feel like now that I'm committed to an unfiltered life, I'm like, this is probably so much more of what our world needs, is more of a dose of real.
Honesty and transparency.
Yeah. And, I'm not 20.
Yeah.
I'm not. And so if a filter, because I thought about it a little longer, because if you piss me off, I'm going to think about it. And so I was like, if any woman that follows me, which is mostly women my age from like 30s to, 60s, right? If they look at me, because I'm 40. And so I'm like, if anyone looks at me and they go, damn, I don't look like that. Like, I wish I did, or whatever. If that elicits, and I'm not in control over that. I get it. I get it. But if my filter does that to people, man, fuck
that's
that.
Not fair.
Like, that's not fair. That's not fair. Because I teach women all the time about bridging the gap between being realistic with themselves, being honest with themselves, showing up well for themselves, and doing that consistently. And so it's important that I'm honest with every aspect of my life.
I think that's a great point. I think that's awesome.
But, back to what you said earlier, and I love that, is that, hey, keeping what you create is less effort than creating it from the start. And I say that to my clients a little bit differently. I'm like, hey, keep up so you never have to catch up.
Nice. Yeah.
Because having the feeling of catching up feels awful.
It does.
It just feels awful.
It's daunting.
It is daunting. It's daunting, and it's really easy to opt out early in, because you put a lot of work in and you don't see results immediately.
Yeah.
And, that's a tough gig to, and again, that's where it's great to have a coach, but that's a tough gig to have a strong enough mind to work through in the beginning.
Totally agree.
But I love that you mentioned that. That's so important.
Yeah. It's something that I've lived by myself, and I've reminded a lot of clients about, because of course, there's always the people who vent or complain about how hard it is, and I'm sure you get this question too. Am I going to have to do this forever? Whether we're talking about GI healing and reversing disease and dysfunction, or we're just talking about losing those 20 pounds, that's a common concern. Do I have to take all these supplements? Do I have to do all this?
Sure.
Some of it, yes, because it's just healthy, like meal prepping instead of Uber Eats. Yes, you do need to keep doing that.
Yes.
But no, you shouldn't be doing 2 hours of exercise every single day and taking all these fat burners. And, if the body is working properly, effectively, you should be moving the needle with minimal effort.
Correct. Yeah.
And we always attribute that to genetics. Oh, some people just have it easier. Some people do. But now we're realizing it's actually dysfunction that's keeping people from moving the needle.
Yes.
Oftentimes more than genetics.
Yes. I'm glad that you brought that up, because if I am working with someone who, and I like to meet people where they are, and this is important to talk about and not just ignore. People come to us from different financial capabilities.
Sure.
And so if someone has the bandwidth or will make the bandwidth, because I've watched people who are like, I don't have the money, but I'm gonna call you back in a month or two and get it because I don't want to waste my time.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important from the jump, if someone is open to it and has the financial ability, hey, check in on your hormones, check in on your GI health, so that you're not climbing such an uphill battle if you have internal dysfunction.
Yeah.
And, I wish that I would have known that back in competing days. Oh my goodness. I mean, there's no telling how much I could have optimized. And I saw that with the GI protocol that I did.
Yeah.
When I cleaned up my gut, it was really easy to keep my body looking beautiful and being lean.
We say this all the time. A healthy body is a responsive body.
Yes, yes.
If your body is not responsive, maybe you need to change your strategies. But if that still doesn't work, if you've gone through 2 coaches and you've done X, Y, and Z, nothing's worked, it's not you. It's, we have to address something internally.
Sure.
There's a reason that it's not working. No matter what your genetics is, no matter where your parents were at, anyone can lose weight. That is not a genetic capacity. Can some people lose weight while not paying attention to food? Sure. But anyone can lose weight if they're checking the right boxes and if their body is functioning properly.
Yes.
I think more people just need to start asking why and dig into that question of why, and that's what we obviously do to help people is dig in and come to better conclusions. And like you said, all the time, it's worth getting that information before you even start.
It is.
It is. You wouldn't race a car before getting it checked by a mechanic. So, on the front end, one of the first things we typically do is intake forms. From there, after asking tons of questions, we then decide what level of lab diagnostic testing do we need, if any, and go from there. Then we get a full picture of what's happening, and then we can really decide how we approach that.
Well, it helps us as coaches really go direct for what is going to render the best result.
Optimal results.
Faster.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of times for people who have done things before, different approaches, and they're frustrated because of lack of result, that is money so well spent.
Totally.
Just for your compliance.
And people think about fast results correlating to more. Let's take your client you just mentioned. 4 kids, 2 jobs. She signs up for CrossFit 5 days a week. You think that that's going to bring you fast results. Opposite. You're probably going to gain weight. You're going to feel worse. And so fast results doesn't mean more work, more intensity.
Sure.
And we've connected those, and it's everything we preach sounds very counterintuitive because we're deprogramming everything society has kind of led us to believe that's not necessarily true. And don't get me wrong, sometimes the answer is more intensity. It's not always less intensity, but it's meeting the specific client where they specifically are.
Sure.
And in that case, intensity is not the answer.
No, I saw that with my own GI protocol.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you sure I can't do more, Matt?
Oh, same here.
Yeah.
Same here. Okay. One last question. What is something you'd like to see change in the current society healthcare system, specifically regarding women's health?
I had so many answers to said women's health. Specifically around women's health. Oh man, I mean, you mean in our healthcare system?
In our healthcare system, the thought process around women's health. What's one thing that you could think of?
Birth control. I mean, I don't even have to think. Birth control.
Yeah.
Birth control. And I probably should think about it, but that's my knee-jerk response is change in birth control. There are so many other options other than hormonal birth control.
Yeah.
And really it would come down to just education.
I agree.
It would come down to
big thing of
education.
education.
And I think that that's a top one. I had a conversation with a friend of mine yesterday who's been on hormonal birth control pretty much her whole life. And she's like, I know that I'm not going to get off of it now. She's like, it is imprinted in my DNA. It has changed every aspect of my brain, my sexual function, what I have to do to enjoy sex. I mean, there was just such a long list of things that she has accepted as this is my life.
Wow.
And it's never going to change.
Wow.
And, GI issues, like long list.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm terrified as to, because she's a smart woman. She's like, I don't think I have the capacity mentally and emotionally to put the pieces back together of what's going to happen to my body when I come off of hormonal birth control. And so I think that would be my response, just education. And also, not that it should go away, but so many women aren't told what is attached to the choice that they're making.
I think that's the biggest thing. Obviously a difference between us is as a male coach speaking to women, I do have to be a little cautious in my approach to talking about birth control. My focus is never, one, I never pass judgment. Two, I'm never telling her she has to come off or, she has to make this decision. More so providing her the full picture of what that means short-term and long-term, what it's been currently doing to her body, proven on lab work, and correlating her symptoms, and also some misguidance or misdirection from the medical community and Google and those research. They actually think that this is helping their endocrine system, helping their skin, helping these things. And it's like, oh no.
I can safely say in my 16 years, I have at least gotten about 500 women off of birth control. I'm going to hit the low end number here. And I've not been hit up for child support once.
Yeah.
Because when you educate a woman and help them optimize function of their body and get their cycles very textbook, it's really easy to manage. There's other options. There's so many other options.
Oh, I totally agree. And I mean, a major option is how about we focus on the male?
Ooh, did you say that?
That's a topic for a different day.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I can even go in a second. You know this, but they have attempted male birth control and everyone has failed. And why has it failed? Because it crashes testosterone. And God forbid we have men without proper hormones affecting their mental health, affecting their physical health, affecting their cardiovascular health. Yet this somehow seems okay or acceptable when we do it to the female population. And
I absolutely love that you just said that.
It just shows the significant difference between how we approach men's health versus women's health.
Sure.
I think and I'll just put it out there, I'll use the term lie. I think a lie or misdirection that we've given women around birth control is that you are taking back control of yourself and that this leads to more freedom. It's the opposite,
It is.
Taking control would be having the knowledge and making your own choice.
Well, and so exactly to what you said, taking control of your health and having the freedom, you trade the freedom, if you will, for, not stressing about pregnancy in giving up the freedom of joy of actual intimacy because your body doesn't function anymore or function well. So you change your entire hormonal profile to where orgasms are almost impossible. Your vagina getting wet and functioning well, you having arousal. I mean, every bit of that, you check that freedom in for a little bit of conscientiousness of the calendar on this side. And that's just lack of education. And so I get that there's a pool of people that this would be ideal for certain sections of their life, but they should be educated on the entire scope of what choice that they're making. And then it should be positioned as a short-term solution,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you read the pamphlet that comes with it, and it's like, hey, you're gonna have blood clots at this age. I mean, there's extreme risk
Extreme.
for getting to late 30s and over 40s.
Yeah. Well, I mean, safe to say that we see at least 75% of women who are on birth control also happen to be on anti-anxiety or some type
Every
of mood
single
stabilizer.
time.
And it's like they almost sold a 2-for-1 combo pack at that
Yes.
place for
Yes.
you. And it goes back to everything we've talked about so far of that business model, but also just negligence of women's health and saying, well, at least she can't have babies. She can be a psychopath. She can have all this anxiety, all this depression. She might even be suicidal. She has extreme metabolic dysfunction. She's at higher risk for dementia and Alzheimer's as she ages. And let's also not bring up that we're not letting 16-year-old women know that by the age of 30, they might be infertile. We're not even bringing that part up.
Sure. And you know what? There's so much said that's not said in exactly the rollout that you just went through about what is a woman's worth.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, so,
Yeah.
What is your worth? Because we don't want to hear what you have to say. We don't care if your brain functions well. We don't care if your emotions are intact. We don't care if you deal with, menstrual dysfunction. We don't care if you want to have children,
Down the line.
Yeah. We don't care. But here's where your value is. There's a lot that's said that's not said in that practice. And so I don't like it.
I wholeheartedly agree.
So, yeah, that's
it.
Without thinking deeper than that. And it's probably because that is a piece that I deal with on a day-to-day
so
basis
much,
with clients.
Yeah, I think the functional community as a whole, that is a major piece that we encounter and, unlock for people is that component. It's one of the first questions we always ask women.
It is.
It's an important one.
Sure.
Well, Lauren, it was awesome to have you on today.
Yeah, it was great. We crushed it.
We did it. Like always, I feel like we could talk endlessly.
Forever.
So let's plan for another episode.
Awesome.
And we'll dive into deeper topics. And, hopefully we hear from some of the viewers about topics that they'd like to hear us chat about in the future too. So thank you so much for coming today.
Yes, and thank you, listeners, for being here.
Yeah, we'll have this episode up in the next couple of days.
Awesome. Thanks.
Thank
Take care. Bye.